When young Ethan went missing, a brave police canine was the only hope to bring him back. A mother's worst nightmare unfolded when Ethan did not come home from school. As panic gripped the town, a determined officer and his fearless canine partner embarked on a desperate chase through the shadows, where every second meant the difference between heartbreak and a miracle. Ethan Carter waved goodbye to his friends and started walking home from school. His backpack bounced on his shoulders as he hummed a song. The sun was bright, and the air was warm. It was a normal day. Nothing seemed wrong, but Ethan never made it home. Hours passed. His mother, Sophia, paced the living room, her hands gripping her phone. She had called his school, his friends, and even the corner store. No one had seen him since he left the school gates. Sophia's heart pounded as she dialed 911. "My son is missing," she said, her voice shaking. "He left school at 3. It's almost 6. He should be home." The town was small, safe. Kids played outside without fear. But now, fear crawled into every corner of Sophia's mind. What if he was hurt? What if someone had taken him? She shook her head. No, she couldn't think that way. Minutes later, police cars pulled up outside her house. Officer Sean Johnson stepped out, his tall frame casting a shadow on the driveway. Beside him was Kai, his loyal canine partner, a German shepherd with sharp eyes and a powerful nose. Sophia ran to Sean. "Please find him," she begged. "We'll do everything we can," Sean said, his voice steady. "Tell me everything." Sophia described Ethan's clothes. A blue hoodie, black jeans, sneakers with red stripes. Her hands trembled as she spoke. She told him the route Ethan always took home. Sean nodded. "We'll start at the school." He and Kai drove to the empty playground behind the school. The swings creaked in the breeze. The slide gleamed under the setting sun. A few wrappers blew across the pavement. Then they saw it. A red baseball cap. Sean picked it up. His stomach tightened. "This is Ethan's, right?" Sophia had told him Ethan always wore a red cap. It was his favorite. He never left home without it. Sean knelt beside Kai. He held the cap close. "Find him, boy." Kai sniffed deeply. His ears perked. His nose twitched. Then, without hesitation, he bolted toward the woods behind the school. Sean ran after him, his boots crunching against fallen leaves. The trees stood tall, their shadows stretching long as the sun dipped lower. Back at Sophia's house, more officers arrived. They knocked on doors, asking if anyone had seen Ethan. Some neighbors joined the search, flashlights in hand. Panic spread through the town like wildfire. Everyone knew Ethan. Everyone wanted to find him. "Ethan," voices called through the night. "Ethan, can you hear us?" But the woods stayed silent. Kai moved fast, his nose to the ground. Sean followed, scanning the trees. Every second that passed made his gut tighten. He had seen cases like this before. Some ended well. Others did not. He wouldn't let this be the latter. The sun disappeared, and darkness swallowed the sky. The air turned cold. A distant owl hooted. The searchlights flickered between the trees, casting eerie shadows. Then Kai stopped. His body stiffened. He let out a low growl. Sean froze. "What is it, boy?" Kai's nose pointed forward. Sean lifted his flashlight, aiming it ahead. And then, just beyond the trees, something moved. The search had led them to something. Kai sniffed the air and bolted forward. His paws pounded the damp earth. The trees swayed in the cold wind. Sean ran behind him, gripping his flashlight tight. Then, he saw them, small footprints pressed into the dirt. Sean knelt, tracing them with his fingers. Ethan had been here. His heart pounded. "We're close," he muttered. Kai barked and pulled ahead. Sean followed. The footprints led deeper into the woods. Then, suddenly Kai stopped. His ears flattened. His body tensed. Sean swung his flashlight ahead. The beam caught something in the mud. Tire tracks. His breath hitched. A car had been here. Recently. His radio crackled. "Johnson, any sign of the boy?" A voice asked. Sean pressed the button. "Negative. But listen, I found tire tracks. This wasn't just a lost kid. Someone took him. We need backup. Now." Silence, then a quick reply. "On the way." Sean's jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists. This changed everything. If Ethan had been taken, time was running out. He turned back to the tracks. The mud was soft. The tires had sunk deep. He studied the pattern, the direction. His stomach sank. The tracks led toward the abandoned mines outside town. No child would go there alone. Kai whined, pacing in circles. He sniffed the ground, then looked up at Sean, waiting for his command. Sean took a deep breath. He had been to those mines before. Years ago, he had chased a fugitive into the tunnels. It was a maze, a place where the darkness swallowed sound, a place where people disappeared. And now a child was there. Sean gripped his radio. "We have a lead, heading toward the mines." He turned to Kai. "Let's go, boy." They took off running. Sean's heart pounded. The wind howled through the trees. His boots hit the dirt hard. He pushed forward. He had no time to waste. Ethan was out there, and Sean was going to bring him home. The closer they got to the mines, the colder the air became. Sean felt it in his bones. The place was silent, too silent. He reached for his radio again. "Johnson to dispatch. I'm at the entrance of the mines. No sign of movement yet. Copy that. Backup ETA 10 minutes. Proceed with caution." Sean clicked the radio off and glanced at Kai. "Stay sharp, boy." The entrance was a gaping hole in the earth. Rusted metal beams framed the tunnel. Broken wooden planks lay scattered nearby, remnants of an old sign that had once warned people to stay away. Kai sniffed the ground, tail rigid, then let out a short, sharp bark. Sean's chest tightened. "You got something?" Kai took off into the tunnel. Sean followed, his flashlight casting shaky beams against the damp walls. The ground was uneven, covered in loose gravel. Water dripped from the ceiling, the sound echoing in the darkness. Then a noise, a faint cry. Sean stopped in his tracks. He held his breath, listening. "Help!" The voice was weak, almost lost in the still air. But it was there. "Ethan! Ethan!" Sean called out. His voice bounced off the walls. "I'm coming. Stay where you are." Kai growled low in his throat. Sean swung the flashlight around, scanning the tunnel. Shadows stretched and twisted. The air felt thick. Then he saw it, an old metal door, slightly ajar. Sean pushed it open. The hinges screeched. The flashlight beam flickered across the small room inside. "Ethan." The boy sat against the wall, his arms wrapped around his knees. His face was pale, his clothes dirty, but he was alive. Sean exhaled sharply. "Ethan, it's okay. I'm here." Ethan looked up, his eyes filled with fear. "He's still here." Sean's blood ran cold. "Oh." Before Ethan could answer, a loud noise echoed from deeper inside the mine. Someone else was there. Sean reached the mine entrance. The wind howled through the tunnels. He listened carefully. Then he heard it, a small, scared voice. Ethan was inside. Sean tightened his grip on the flashlight. He moved carefully, his boots crunching against the dirt. Kai stayed close, ears alert, eyes scanning every shadow. A dark figure stood near the entrance. Sean froze. His flashlight caught the man's face. Richard Miller. Richard's eyes burned with anger. His face was thin, his jaw clenched. His hands twitched at his sides. Sean steadied himself. "Richard, step away from the boy." Richard didn't move. His lips curled into a bitter smile. "She took my son's future," he said coldly. "Now she will know what that feels like." Sean's heart pounded. He knew what Richard meant. Years ago, Richard's son had been expelled from school after a fight. The principal, Miss Shelby Mark, Sean's mother, had made the decision. Richard blamed her for everything, and now he wanted revenge. Sean took a slow step forward. Richard, listen to me. Ethan is just a kid. He has nothing to do with this. Richard's fingers twitched. She took my son's future, he repeated. His voice cracked. So I took hers. Sean's stomach turned. Richard had planned this. He had taken Ethan to hurt Ms. Mark. Kai growled. Sean's pulse raced. He needed to act fast. Richard stepped back, deeper into the mine. Sean heard Ethan whimper. If Richard disappeared into the tunnels, they might never find him again. Let the boy go, Sean said, his voice firm. Richard shook his head. Not yet. She needs to suffer first. Sean clenched his jaw. She's not here, Richard. It's just you and me. Let's end this now. Richard hesitated. His breath was ragged. He looked tired, broken, but his grip on the past held strong. Sean took another step. Let Ethan go, and we can talk. No one else needs to get hurt. Richard's hand shook. For a moment, his eyes flickered with doubt. Then, suddenly, he lunged. Sean barely had time to react. Richard pulled a rusted pipe from behind his back and swung it toward him. Sean ducked, rolling to the side. The pipe smashed against the rock wall, sending sparks into the air. Kai leapt forward, teeth bared. Richard stumbled back, swinging wildly. Kai dodged and snapped at his arm, forcing him to drop the pipe. Kai back, Sean ordered. Kai retreated, but his eyes stayed locked on Richard, ready to strike again. Sean sprang to his feet and rushed forward. He grabbed Richard's wrist, twisting it behind his back. Richard struggled, but Sean held firm. It's over, Sean said, breathing hard. Richard's strength faded. He sagged against the wall, his chest rising and falling in sharp breaths. You don't understand, he whispered. She ruined everything. Sean shook his head. This isn't the way. Richard's eyes filled with something close to regret. Then he slumped down, defeated. Sean quickly radioed for backup. Suspect in custody. The boy is safe. Repeat, the boy is safe. Relief flooded his chest as he turned to Ethan. The boy was still curled up against the wall, his eyes wide with fear. Sean knelt beside him. Hey, buddy. It's okay now. You're safe. Ethan's lip trembled. He said I'd never see my mom again. Sean's heart ached. He placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. No one is taking you from your mom. You're going home. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. Sean helped him to his feet. The boy clung to him, small hands gripping his jacket tightly. A few minutes later, sirens wailed outside. Officers rushed in, securing Richard and checking on Ethan. Sophia arrived moments later. The second she saw her son, she broke into sobs. Ethan, she cried, pulling him into her arms. Ethan buried his face in her shoulder. Mom! Sean stepped back, letting them have their moment. A lump formed in his throat. It was over. Ethan was safe. Kai nudged Sean's hand. He looked down at his partner, warmth spreading through his chest. Good job, boy, he whispered, rubbing Kai's head. As Richard was led away in cuffs, he glanced back at Sean. His face was empty, his anger gone. Only regret remained. Sean watched him go, then turned back to Ethan and Sophia. This case had been personal. It had been painful, but in the end, they had saved a life. Kai sensed danger. He growled low, muscles tensed. His eyes locked onto Richard. The man's breath was heavy, his hands trembling. Richard pulled out a knife. Sean's heart pounded. He kept his voice calm. This won't fix anything, he said. It's over. Richard's grip tightened around the handle. His knuckles turned white. She took everything from me, he muttered. His eyes darted between Sean and Ethan. Sean took a step forward. Put the knife down, Richard. Richard shook his head. His breath was ragged. No, he whispered. Not yet. Then he lunged. But Kai was faster. The dog leapt, grabbing Richard's arm. Richard gasped in pain, the knife clattering to the ground. He struggled, but Kai held firm. Sean moved quickly. He tackled Richard to the ground, forcing his arms behind his back. Richard thrashed, screaming in rage, but Sean didn't let go. He pulled out his cuffs and secured Richard's wrists. "It's over," Sean said, breathing hard. Richard let out a broken sob. His body went limp. Sean looked up. Ethan stood frozen, tears streaking his face. "Ethan," Sean called gently. Ethan's lip trembled. Then, suddenly, he ran forward and threw his arms around Sean. "I was so scared," he cried. Sean wrapped his arms around the boy. "You're safe now. No one will hurt you." The distant sound of sirens grew louder. Flashlights danced through the trees. Officers rushed into the mine. Sophia appeared at the entrance. The moment she saw Ethan, she gasped. "Ethan!" Ethan broke away from Sean and ran to his mother. Sophia dropped to her knees, pulling him into a tight hug. Tears streamed down her face. "I thought I lost you," she sobbed. "I'm okay, Mom," Ethan whispered. "Sean saved me. And Kai." Sophia looked up at Sean, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she choked out. "Thank you for bringing him back." Sean gave a small nod. "He's a strong kid." The officers led Richard away in cuffs. His face was blank, his anger drained. He glanced at Sean one last time before disappearing into the night. Sean exhaled, the weight of the night finally settling in his chest. He knelt beside Kai and scratched behind his ears. "Good job, buddy. You did great." Kai wagged his tail, licking Sean's hand. The mine was silent now. The danger was gone, but the town would never forget the whispers in the woods. And neither would Sean. Ethan was safe. That was all that mattered. Later that night, Sean sat in his patrol car, staring out at the dark sky. The radio buzzed with voices, but he barely heard them. His mind replayed the events of the night. The fear in Ethan's eyes, the anger in Richard's voice, the way Kai had reacted without hesitation. Kai rested his head on Sean's lap. Sean ran a hand through the dog's thick fur. "You saved him, you know," he whispered. Kai let out a soft huff, his tail thumping against the seat. A knock on the window startled Sean. He rolled it down to see Sophia standing there, holding a cup of coffee. "I figured you could use this," she said with a tired smile. Sean took it, the warmth spreading through his fingers. "Thanks." Sophia leaned against the car. "I don't know how to repay you." Sean shook his head. "You don't have to. Just take care of Ethan. That's all that matters." She nodded, her eyes welling up again. "I will." Ethan peeked out from behind her, clutching a stuffed animal in one hand. "Sean." Sean turned to him. "Yeah, buddy." Ethan hesitated, then stepped forward and wrapped his small arms around Sean. "Thank you." Sean swallowed the lump in his throat and hugged him back. "Anytime, kid." As Sophia and Ethan walked away, Sean took a deep breath. The night had been long. The town had been shaken. But in the end, Ethan was home, and that was enough. Kai nudged Sean's hand, and he smiled down at him. "Come on, buddy. Let's go home." He started the car, the engine rumbling to life. As they drove off, the town lights flickered in the distance, and for the first time in a long while, Sean felt at peace.